Hey everybody, it's GobletX, and it's time for the Brothers War Early Access event. Thank you very much to Wizards of the Coast for providing me with this early access account, and today I'm going to be using it to play my very first ever draft of the brand new limited format. If you want to play some Brothers War yourself, the earliest time to do that is at pre-release weekend at your local game store starting tomorrow. And the set will fully launch on Magic Arena on Tuesday. Without further ado, let's hop into this draft and see where the cards take us today. Soon as the 8th person readies up. All right, here we go. Ooh, we're in a draft with Newmont and Lolaman, some very good, very good drafters. So one of the first things you're going to notice is that there is a retro framed artifact in every pack. These cards are reprints of iconic or powerful artifacts from Magic's past, very similar to what the Mystical Archives did for spells in Strixhaven. These are not standard legal, but they're 100% draftable. You can draft and play with these cards. Mox Amber, however, not a super powerful one, not something we're going to take here. Our rare, on the other hand, 2 green and X to make X 1/1 Forest Dryad land creature tokens. Kind of a weird card, but it seems pretty powerful to me. 6 mana to make 4 1/1s. Not the greatest thing ever, but the fact that they also all tap for lands, or they all tap for mana to help cast other big spells seems pretty cool to me. This is a set full of really high mana cost, really cool artifacts, and massive creatures to cast, so I'm just going to roll with Awaken the Woods. I'm not going to be playing incredibly well in any of these early access drafts, obviously, because it's my very first experience with the format, so we're just going to be doing some big splashy fun things, and Awaken the Woods certainly fits into that category. So we'll talk about some of the unique mechanics to this set as they pop up. One of them is Unearth, as you can see on the Teresian Mindbreaker here. This is a mechanic back from Shards of Alara. They've brought this back. It's a really cool one. It's basically flashback for your permanents. You get to spend the Unearth cost to bring this card back from the graveyard to the battlefield, give it haste, and then exile it during the end step. So you only get it back one time, you only get it back as a sorcery, but it comes back for one last swing, and with the Mindbreaker that would be another swing, milling half your opponent's library again. So cool card there. Not a super great follow-up to Awaken the Woods, because this wants us to be in very heavy blue to be able to unearth this, and I don't think this is mega powerful on just the colorless side itself, so not super into that. These other uncommons, not in love with the Forging the Anchor or the Alloy Animist. The idea behind this is it works with the Powerstone mechanic, which we'll talk about in a moment. But what I'm going to go with here is another mana ramp card. I'm just going to take a bunch of mana ramp cards at the start here, and then hopefully get some really cool big artifacts later that are more powerful than the Mindbreaker. So this shows off the Powerstone mechanic. That's when this enters the battlefield, you create a tapped Powerstone. That is basically a mechanic that's just making tokens that can help you cast your big artifact spells. These can use that colorless mana to use abilities as well, but you can't use this mana for casting non-artifact spells. So pretty interesting mechanic that works well in a deck that's trying to ramp into massive artifact creatures and stuff. So starting off with 2 really nice ramp cards. Now we get to show off the prototype mechanic, and I'll probably just take this card here to keep it simple. Again, my very first ever draft in the format, and I'm trying to explain this all as if it's all of your very first experiences with the format as well. So I'm less concerned with drafting a super good deck right now and more concerned with getting you all just kind of a foot in the door here, getting you all informed on the mechanics and stuff in the set before pre-release weekend. So here we have the prototype mechanic, which is really cool. This makes your big high mana value artifact creatures a lot more flexible. So if you don't have the mana to cast them in the early game, that's fine. You can still do something with them. So Cradle Clearcutter shows off the mechanic in that you get a 6 mana 3/6 that taps for 3 green mana, but if you can't afford that, you can instead cast it for the prototype cost to get a 3 mana 1/3 with the same abilities, so a 3 mana 1/3 that taps for a single green mana. So since this is a super artifact heavy format, there are a few cards in the format that really incentivize you to play as close to a monocolored deck as possible, and Corrupt is one of those cards. It's going to deal damage equal to the number of swamps you control to any target, and then you gain that much life. Huge, incredible blowout if you're in mono black. Right now we're starting with 2 really strong green cards and a green prototype card, so Corrupt is not going to work great in here. It would be in a 2-color deck where it does go down a lot in power. I'm just going to go for a Blanchwood Prowler here. Seems like a fine little dork. A 2-mana 1/1, we mill 3, and then we can put a land from the milled cards into our hands. So 2-mana 1/1, draw land to your hand is pretty good. So if we're not failing on the mill, it's a good card. And if we don't hit a land in our grave after the mill, we still get a 2-mana 2/2 off of this. Su-Chi Caveguard is pretty cool, but it doesn't have a prototype ability for any flexibility, and I think I would prefer to have as many just big prototyping dorks as possible. That way we're not caught with our pants down if we don't draw any mana ramp cards, where we just have an 8-mana card in our hand that's uncastable. I think there are enough cool big prototype cards that we hopefully don't need a card like the Su-Chi Caveguard that does not have a prototype. Chromatic Lantern's a very cool retro artifact that could help us with our ramp dreams. So I might just scoop that up here. We're doing a really good job in that every single card we've taken so far in some way or another helps ramp us. So I'm going to take this Chromatic Lantern here and yeah, see where we go from there. We have a rare here, Tokasia Digsite Mentor. Gives all of your creatures Vigilance and Surveil 1, but it is a very strict mana cost. A 3-colored card here, and has a good ability in the graveyard, but you need green, green, white, white, blue, blue to hit it. Obviously, Chromatic Lantern would help cast that card a lot and that ability, but we can't rely on always drawing our 1 copy of Chromatic Lantern, so seems a little narrow. That being said, these green cards don't seem super awesome. Goring Warplow is probably one of the strongest cards, very flexible prototype card here. 2 mana for a 1/1 Death Touch or 6 mana for a 5/4 Death Touch. Might just take the Goring Warplow over the rare there, maybe move into a green-black strategy. Excellent reprint for Commander. I'd be so happy to open this up in my pre-release kit this weekend. The Ashnod's Altar here, not something I can really use in my limited deck right now, but such an excellent reprint to put in the set. We do have a shoot down, which is interesting. Most sets this would be unplayable, but as you've seen in the packs so far, there's a lot of just big, scary artifact creatures, so being able to have at least one piece of removal that can just exile any artifact seems kind of nice. So I might take shoot down. Evolving Wilds is also okay, and even if we don't have blue in our deck, just a 9-mana 9/9 might be what we're looking for in this kind of green strategy, but I'll save that for later. That'll be like the kind of backup plan sort of card that we pick up during pack 2, pack 3. If it ends up being that way. Well, if a Corrupt is going to go pick 8, maybe we try to do green-black here. Again, in 2-color, Corrupt is a lot weaker. You're happy with this card at about 4 swamps. 6 mana for 4 damage to any target, and gain 4 is a pretty decent deal. And anything better than that is going to get a lot better. Then it's going to be a super, super good card. So I'll take Corrupt here. Maybe we can push towards black as the main color and green as a splash. It would be difficult, but again, the green cards, the colorless cards don't look super awesome here anyway, so I'll just take the strongest card in the pack, which there, in my opinion, is Corrupt. Wield the Mox Amber. We have a Perimeter Patrol, 3 mana, 3/3 at worst. Gets a +1/+0 until end of turn every time an artifact hits the board, which is nice. Disciples of Gix is pretty cool as well. This works great with that Unearth mechanic I was talking about earlier, because I believe every Unearth card in the set is an artifact. So if you can cast this and put 3 Unearth cards in your graveyard, it's a pretty great deal. I'm already trying to push in a black potentially with this Corrupt, so take the Disciples of Gix. So I'm not 100% sure, but I think the other Corrupt was around this pack or next pack. So if we don't see that Corrupt, it might not be a great sign for black. Sentinel Stalwart is interesting. The really cool thing this card can do is it can tap an untapped Powerstone you control, so that you get to use the Powerstone to cast your non-artifact spells, which you can't normally do. I might just play around with that. I don't think the Gixian Infiltrator is like super wild. We're not missing much there. So we'll take the Stalwart, maybe see if that does anything in this kind of ramp deck. Now we have a Deathbloom Ritualist. 5 mana for a 3/5, tap it for X mana of any one color, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. There is a good amount of self-mill in this deck. There's a common in every single color that's like the Blanchwood Prowler, where you mill 3 cards, then return a card of a specific type from your grave to hand. So if we can pick up just a few more Blanchwood Prowlers and some black cards, Deathbloom Ritualist could be a very real way to cast a really, really massive Awake in the Woods, or just like a 10 mana prototype creature. This pack, I don't think anything's very good for us. I guess I'll just take Stern Lesson. It looks like the best card in the pack, but we are not going to be in blue at this rate. Another shoot down. I don't think I want to main deck 2 of these, but I'll have that option in the sideboard, so if I find myself after a couple games playing against a million really scary artifacts, I could main deck 2 copies of shoot down. Ooh, what do we have? Pack 2. We've got a Phyrexian Dragon Engine. This is a 3-mana 2/2 double strike at worst, even if you can never cast the Unearth, which is a really good deal. A 3-mana 2/2 double strike that is not color restrictive in any way. That's just a scary, cheap threat. I'm pretty sure literally every deck drafts this, and if you happen to be in red, you're really happy with it. If you are living in magical Christmas land and you manage to get Mishra and Phyrexian Dragon Engine, that's where the meld mechanic comes into play, where you'd meld those 2 cards together into one gigantic card that basically wins the game on the spot, but they're both rares, not going to happen super often in limited. We're just going to take this as a 3-mana 2/2 double strike. Seems like a pretty ridiculously good deal. All right, pack 2, pick 2. We've got a pretty cool sacrifice card here, Transmigrant Altar. But I don't have any super expendable creatures as of yet. But this is a very cool card I could see seeing a lot of Commander play in the future. 2 mana tap, sack a creature, get a 3/3, or 1 mana tap, sack a creature, get 3 mana. Reconstructed Thopter seems pretty fine. 3 mana, 2/1 flyer. It unearths 1 time for 2. Very basic stuff there. Sword of the Meek, another really cool. I love these retro artifacts so much. They're so iconic. Sword of the Meek, iconic because it combos with Thopter Foundry, which is a card that lets you sacrifice an artifact to make a 1/1. So you sack the sword, make a 1/1, then the sword is in your grave, a 1/1 has hit your board, and the sword comes right back. So that was a really cool combo in the past. For this pack, I'm going to go with an Emergency Weld. This looks like a card that's going to be an incredibly good deal in this format. As I said before, there are several cards that mill yourselves in this format at common for cheap. And this is just 1 and a black, just 2 mana total for basically a 1/1 Gravedigger. You get a 1/1 on the board, and you return an artifact or creature from your graveyard to your hand. So excellent deal there. I'm actually going to go with that there. Clay Revenant is probably one of the best ways to get that Ashnod's Transmigrant working. That's making those 3/3s and getting extra mana and stuff. When you have a creature like the Clay Revenant that can just keep coming back, that seems like a good way to do it. Tower Worker's interesting. It might be fine here. Another Mana Dork, just tap for 1. Gonna be really hard to get Tower Worker, Mine Worker, and Power Plant Worker on the board at the same time, but obviously that's a dream you gotta try to live one time in draft, right? I don't know here. I like the Tower Worker, I like the Thopter, I like the Infiltrator. Not really looking at other colors because again, first draft ever. I don't know the set well enough right now to read every single card in the pack, so it makes it a lot easier when I just lock myself into 2 colors from the start here. So again, all of these early access drafts and sealed, I'm not going to be playing 100% the most competitive best picks ever because I'm very unfamiliar with the set and I'm just trying to check out all the new cards and play around with it a little bit at first. But I will have some very competitive drafts and sealeds coming after the set officially releases next Tuesday. So I'm going to take a Disfigure here. This looks like a really good deal. 1 mana for -2/2 at instant speed. This can take out a lot of cheap cards from your opponent. Anything from 1 to 3 mana creatures will often have 2 or less toughness. And then it just works as a combat trick later in the game. Even though it's never going to kill a 4/4 by itself, if your 4/4 blocks their 4/4, now you get to trade a Disfigure into their 4/4 instead of your 4/4, and I've said 4/4 a lot of times. Here's a card I'm really happy to ramp into. That's the Boulder Branch Golem. This is 7 mana for a 6/5 that gains you 6 life when it enters the battlefield. So a really good way to stabilize against a more aggressive strategy. You gain back all that life that you lost early in the game, and now you have the biggest creature on the board, most likely. And then yeah, that's where you really come back, and then you have all the time in the world to start casting more big, beefy cards. So I think Boulder Branch Golem is going to be a great common role filler in these green-based ramp decks like what I'm building here. So we're going to play around with that one here. Now, what do we have? Doesn't look like anything great for green or black. Again, I already have multiple shoot downs. I don't think I want more. Scrapwork Cohort looks pretty good if you're playing white, giving you multiple creatures off 1 card. You know, Soul Guide Lantern might not be terrible. This is a card where the worst case scenario is that you're spending 2 mana to draw a card, you're just cycling it away, which isn't horrible, not a bad fail state, since you're just getting it right out of the way and getting to your next card. And best case scenario, your opponent gets an Unearth card in their grave early and you just exile it and draw a card. It's a pretty good deal. So we'll roll with that there. Oof. This is a card that I really want to try out. This is either going to be sweet in the right deck or just horrible always, and there's not really an in-between, and I'm hoping this is the kind of card that is sweet in the right deck. When you have a bunch of like 7 to 9 mana prototype artifacts, just getting a few Powerstone tokens and gaining some life, just setting up for a really explosive turn 6, sounds super fun. So I'm going to go Excavation here. I think Energy Refractor is another card that's probably going to play a lot better than it looks in the format. 2 mana to play it and you draw a card, but then you get to get a mana of any color off of it later for 2 mana. So it always puts you down a mana when you do that. But with Powerstone tokens, you can help pay for that ability. And it's a really good way to help you hit off-color Unearth cards. So then I could take stuff like that white Unearth card, and then every once in a while I'll just have a random white mana. So I'm going to take the Energy Refractor this time. And my deck might just be a complete pile of nonsense by the end of this draft, but whatever, we're going to have fun with it. I'll take the Suchi Cave Garden now, since it wheeled back around to us. Big old 8 mana, 8/8 Vigilance Ward 4. The death trigger doesn't matter too much because most often I would assume this is going to die during your opponent's turn when they cast a removal spell on it. Then you can't really use a bunch of colorless mana. But if it dies during combat on your turn, you do get 8 mana back out of it. Maybe dump all that mana into an Awake in the Woods and just pop off. That would be cool. We have a gigantic Tree Folk with Trample that gives something +X/+X till end of turn, where X is the number of creatures in grave, or got a big flying artifact creature thing. I'll just take the big Tree Folk here, I guess. End the turn. Return all non-land permanents to their owner's hands. End the turn. If it's not your turn, this card costs 10 mana. Yeah, that seems bad in 1v1 draft. I'll just take another shoot down. Supply drop is good if you're lucky, and both of these halves of this card play well for you, but it's just a lot of mana for what it's doing. Tawnos feels the same, but take the Tawnos' Tinkering. Neither seem great. I guess we get another Tawnos' Tinkering, and I've got a 24 card deck here. We get to cut a lot of stuff when we get to deck building, because we've got a whole third pack to throw stuff into the deck. Ooh, Platinum Angel. So cool to see these retro artifacts. I don't know what the list of retro artifacts is. I've generally looked over the main set list of the set, but I haven't really looked at the retro artifacts, so I'm just so happy every time I open one of these retro artifacts and I just look at it, I'm like, oh my god, that's so cool. That's so cool. Platinum Angel, not actually that great in Limited, though, because you're playing 7 mana for a 4/4 flyer, and sure, that ability is pretty big, but a 4/4 flyer is already the kind of card that's likely going to win you the game if your opponent doesn't blow it up, so you're just playing a 7 mana card, and they're just playing a 3 mana removal spell, and then you're just not happy with it. We're pretty heavy into green. We could play Blanchwood Armor. Skyfisher Spider is probably the best choice here, but Blanchwood Armor is the funniest. The Skyfisher Spider there is a 4 mana 3/3 reach. You can sacrifice a creature to destroy any non-land permanent when it comes into play. Super excellent deal. Speaking of excellent deals when it comes to removal, Overwhelming Remorse is going to be the premium black removal spell in the format. 1 mana. Well, 1 black mana and 4 generic. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. To exile a creature or planeswalker at instant speed. However, it could cost you only 1 mana because it costs 1 less to cast for each creature in your grave. This card seems absurd. It's already good for 5 mana. A 5 mana instant that exiles a creature or planeswalker, fine deal. And often it's just going to be a ridiculously good deal if you just have a few creatures in grave. So I'm going to take that Overwhelming Remorse. Really liked that prototype dork too, though. 2 mana 1/1 or 6 mana 5/4 Death Touch. Another excellent commander card in the retro artifacts here, and a classic artifact. Very iconic Mind's Eye here. Whenever an opponent draws a card, you can spend 1 to draw a card of your own. It's probably not actually that horrible and limited also. This is very similar to Joda's Codex from Dominar United. So if you're a slower, grindier deck like those 5-color domain decks were in Dominar United, this is giving you pretty similar value. you just guaranteed have to spend 1 mana every time you draw off a card off of it. That being said, really, really good deal here. The Obstinate Baloth, this used to be a rare, now it's an uncommon. A 4 mana 4/4 that gains you 4 life when it enters the battlefield is huge in any just swingy game where both of you are trying to be aggressive, and it's got a really cool alternate casting cost where if your opponent makes you discard it, you just put it into play for free. So this is a cool card that they've reprinted into Standard to play against Liliana of the Veil, which is very cool. Jellum Tome, iconic card because it's been around since like Alpha. One of the weakest of the retro artifacts though. Killzone Acrobat seems fine because you can sacrifice Power Stones to use its ability, and I don't really want a like 50th copy of Shootdown, so I guess I'll take the Killzone Acrobat here. Another Disfigure seems pretty good. Goring Warplow seems great. Self-Assembler's kind of a sad retro artifact reprint, although there are some assembly workers in the set. Okay, that makes sense. That's kind of cool. Yeah, that's a cool choice. But what was so powerful and iconic about this card in Kaladesh is that it was a common in that format. So the whole idea was that you would just draft multiple copies of it, and then your deck would be the kind of deck that if you ever make it to 5 mana, you're like, okay, if I ever make it to 5 mana, I know I have a guaranteed like 3 5 mana 4/4s in my hand, because the first one grabs the second one, which grabs the third one. So that's really cool. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be that great. But I'm doing really, really well on removal in my opinion, so I took the Goring thing over the Disfigure, I think. Ooh, Phyrexian Rager, that costs 1 more mana, but has Unearth, is a pretty good deal. This card is so good that, honestly, it's like fine to good filler for any deck, even if you don't have access to black mana. But if you do have access to black mana, then that's where it looks like it's probably a legitimately great card. But yeah, I mean, it's at least playable filler for any deck. Just a 4 mana 2/2 draw card. So another Tower Worker, Giant Growth is a pretty good deal. Liquid Metal Coating, pretty iconic card that works with a lot of combos where you turn something into an artifact and steal it, or something like that. Honestly, I think I'm just looking for more gigantic, stupid dorks, so I'm going to take a Heavyweight Demolisher here, even though I don't have the red to unearth it. Just a gigantic menace game ender, maybe. Just really want to make sure I have a ton of just gigantic nonsense to ramp into. Yeah, I mean, Power Plant Worker, 5 mana 4/4, mediocre ability there. I don't know how many great non-creature artifacts and enchantments there will be in this set. There's a lot of good artifact creatures. There's a few artifact removal spells. I'll start main decking a Haywire Might and see how it plays for me. That could be interesting. Another Energy Refractor seems fine. Wasteful Harvest is good with my Graveyard Synergy cards, but that's about it. Take an Energy Refractor. That other card there was interesting as well, the one where you get to draw a card whenever you play a creature with similar power and toughness. I do kind of have a mountain at 6 mana here, but I'm adding another one with Warplow. I'd rather add another Warplow than a 9-drop. Sure, I'll get another Suchi Cave Guard. This is going to be a fun one. Some kind of green, black, some graveyard synergies, and some ramp synergies. Very interesting time for my first Brothers War draft. I'm so excited about this set. If you couldn't tell already, there's so much about the set that's just really, really cool to me. I love artifacts. I love the Unearth mechanic. I love retro frames. Classic cards too. Wow, these people do not like the Mightstone's animation in this draft pod. I think that card's actually going to be a pretty great card as the format progresses. Might be bold to say now, but 4 mana to turn a Mightstone into a 4/4. The biggest part of this card that makes it playable, in my opinion, is that you get to draw a card. So if you have a good amount of just like Energy Refractors and Power Stones, then yeah, it's basically a 4 mana 4/4 that draws you a card when you play it, which is an incredible deal if it's that. So it's very much a build around, it's very much a draft around. You need a lot of artifacts for it. The best way is to have a bunch of Power Stones, but I think this card's going to be a lot better than it looks at first glance. At first glance, you're like, oh, that's just bad. That's never going to happen. But I think there's cool ways to try to build with that card in this format. Anyways, we've got to cut 12 cards out of this deck here. Probably going to try to just do it relatively quickly here so we can get into the gameplay and get some experience with the format. This Tanos' Tinkering doesn't seem like a super good trick, so I might want to cut that. I love all these prototype large cards, but the one that has the red Unearth might be a bit bold. I might keep the 2 Suchi Cave Guards, though, just because it's funny. We can't ramp into Pallbearer with any Mind Stones, any Power Stones, but we don't actually have that many Power Stones. Most of our ramp can cast anything, right? We have the Opportunist for a Power Stone, but then Tower Worker taps for a mana for anything. Stalwart, taps for mana for anything. Ritualist taps for anything. The Clear Cutter taps for anything. I definitely want the triple War Plow because these are my 2-drops. It's a 2-mana 1/1 Death Touch on curve. And then if we draw it later, we just have another 6-mana 5/4. These kind of prototype cards seem like they're going to be really, really good. Because as you can see, it makes the curve perfect. Where like I have all these 2-drops, but also I don't just end up drawing a bunch of really weak 2-drops late game because all of a sudden if I draw this late game, instead it's a 5/4 Death Touch. Which is super good. Boulder Branch also, that's a 4-mana 3/3 worst case scenario. I didn't get that much Unearth, did I? I have one. I can only unearth the Phyrexian Dragon Engine if I have my Chromatic Lantern on board, but I'm going to keep the Chromatic Lantern in the deck just for that one-off synergy, potentially, because it's pretty cool. Maybe I don't start with Haywire Might in the deck. Not sure. Still don't know if Corrupt quite gets there. And again, it looked like I only had like one Unearth card, so I think Disciples of Gix will end up being pretty bad. Yeah, I do have Blanchwood Armor that wants me to have 1,000,000 forests, and Corrupt that wants me to have 1,000,000 swamps. Having both is awkward, and I've got a lot more green cards in general. Blanchwood Armor plus Awaken the Woods is the funniest combo ever. Right? Like I Blanchwood Armor when I have like 4 forests and 3 swamps or something. And then this is giving something +4/+4, and then next turn I'll just Awaken the Woods, and that's kind of living the dream. Yeah, I think I'm cutting Corrupt, probably. Excavation, because when you look at our prototype cards where we can just cast them cheap, there's not that much we need to excavate for, but it's still good with Suchi. Just kind of wish I had a better mana sink activated ability that I could put my Power Stones towards using. Because that's the alternate effect of the Power Stones is, sure, they can't cast non-artifact spells, but that's the only restriction. There's nothing stopping these from being used on activated abilities like Energy Refractors that I have. But there's a lot of other cards in the set that have like 7 mana activated abilities that you can start using your Power Stones for if you run out of cards in hand. One of the ones that seems pretty sweet is like the 2 and a blue 2/3. For 7 mana, you just draw 2 cards. That feels like a good way to use Power Stones. I'm going to keep this in the main deck for now. Let's see how many cards we have if we cut everything I've set aside. I still need to cut 5 more cards, probably go non-creature cards here. Soul Guide Lantern, a little narrow. Emergency Weld is basically another creature, so how many do we have here? 17? Pretty high creature count, we could cut another there. We don't have that many graveyard synergies. I can cut the Wasteful Harvest. Yeah, I'll cut the Lantern, the Wasteful Harvest. 3 more cards to go. Killzone Acrobat, we didn't get that many Power Stones for expendable artifacts to sacrifice, and we don't really have expendable creatures to sacrifice either. Our main graveyard synergy is just Deathbloom Ritualist, and this still synergizes. If I just play a bunch of 2-mana 1/1 Death Touchers and trade them off, I'll still have a couple creatures engraved by the time I hit 5 mana, and even if this only taps for 2 mana, it's still pretty good. So, cut the Acrobat. Don't have too many reasons I really need the Energy Refractors or the Sentinel Stalwart for that point. Although even Sentinel Stalwart's ability to tap itself and like a 1/1 Death Toucher or a 1/1 to get a mana seems pretty good. I'm going to start with Stalwart main deck. Maybe I do drop Chromatic Lantern. Just drop all of this mana fixing stuff and just stick to pure green-black. I still have that rare occasion of unearthing the Phyrexian Dragon Engine, where I could use the Deathbloom Ritualist to get there. Probably doesn't happen very often, but we'll see. Let's drop 1 Refractor, 1 Lantern here, and that'll be the deck. And then all of our 3 mana rocks are creatures as well. The Clear Cutter is a creature and a mana rock, Tower Worker is a creature and a mana rock, and Opportunist is a creature that spits out a mana rock. So there we go. We'll call that a deck here. Again, not super certain on it, but it looks like some fun stuff that I'm quite excited to play, so we'll just roll with it here and see how the format is. I'm not going to be editing today's video at all, so I'm just going to hop right into the gameplay. Not going to make it pretty or change the name or anything. We're just going to hop in there. This is going to be an unedited, just raw video dump on the channel. We don't do these too often anymore. I like to edit out the time that it takes to get into the draft pod, and then the time in between games where I'm waiting on the queue. But for the early access events, we always get the footage to you as quickly as possible for the first daily video. But there are 4 days between now and the official launch of the set on Arena, so I'm going to be recording 4 more videos today, and those will be the daily videos for the coming few days. And those will all be edited to cut out some dead air. If somebody takes a really long turn or anything like that. Ooh, we missed on the Blanchwood Prowler and we hit some of our best cards. Awaken the Woods, Blanchwood Armor, and Boulder Branch Golem. That feels so bad. Saddest Blanchwood Prowler. Oh my god, an Amazonian Amy over here has a turn 3 Gix. Whenever a creature deals combat damage to one of your opponents, its controller may pay a life and draw a card. So Amy gets to draw another card every time she damages us with one of her creatures, which is a really bad sign for us. Yeah, that we gotta just insta-trade. Can't let this thing do anything. That's so bad for us. Let's get a creature that's big enough to trade into Gix onto the board and hope Amy does not have cheap removal. If she does, we're probably going to get steamrolled here because this is a very snowball-y kind of effect where it keeps you, the moment you get into the lead, you maintain that lead easily because you're drawing 2 cards every turn, which means you can easily throw out 1-for-1 removal spells or trade your creatures off 1-for-1 because your opponent's going to fall behind in card advantage quickly. Alright, we have to get got by whatever combat trick this is, because there's no possible way we can just let Gix in. Oh my god. Maybe Amy has some graveyard recursion here. Yeah, recommission. Return an artifact or creature with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. If a creature enters the battlefield this way, it enters with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. That is disgusting with Gix, making Gix come back as a 4/4 here. So we have 5 mana towards artifacts, thanks to the Powerstone. I think I have to just play a double striking Phyrexian Dragon Engine here because it's big enough to kill Gix if Amy runs out of cards. It is 4 power, 2 first strike damage, and 2 regular combat damage. And unfortunately, Amy's got that main deck disenchant. That's going to be a thing you're going to see a lot in this format with the amount of powerful artifacts. And looks like we are probably losing this game. The Gix is going to pop off here. Amy's going to draw an extra card. She's got a 5/4 down and 3 cards in hand. We do have more cards here than her, but that is not going to keep up because of Gix's activated ability. Now there's a 4/4 over there. I do have the 6 mana to play a 3/6, so I can block one of the creatures easily. Or I could just play 3 Power Stones, or I could play Deathbloom Ritualist. I'm going to play the 3/6 because this is big enough to survive 1 block, and it does the same thing as Excavation, where if it sticks around, it lets me cast my 8/8 next turn. Alright, and Gix triggers whichever ability it is. Yeah, so it doesn't matter which creature hits me, Gix will trigger. And Amy will draw another card. Airlift Chaplain here, that's a mill 3. If they hit a plains or a creature, they can put in hand, and if they don't, they get a +1/+1 counter. So a 3 mana, 2/2 flyer otherwise, but Amy did hit a Burnished Heart. And yep, we're just falling really far behind because of Gix. Just play an 8/8 pass and pray. If I can somehow survive, I do have the combo where the Ritualist can get me the red to Unearth Phyrexian Dragon Engine, but it's not even that good, Unearth, because it's going to get like one swing in. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, that's super bad. Oh, it's not even once per creature? Wow, Gix is disturbingly good. If you hit your opponent with 3 creatures, you draw 3 cards. Definitely feels like we stood no chance here. Amy even has the Graveyard Hate, so I don't even get to try to unearth the Phyrexian Dragon Engine. And no one left behind for Gix as well. That is so sick. Alright, we're very dead. The Sutri does have Vigilance, but I'm basically just scooping here. We will move on to game 2. Very cool deck from Amy there, the white-black Reanimator deck, which has a lot of cards that are really efficient at reanimating something that costs 3 or less, which is normally pretty good, like the resurrect something that costs 3 or less and put a +1/+1 counter on it. When you happen to get a mythic rare creature that costs 3 mana or less, that's that deck becomes disturbingly good, because you just can't get rid of the Gix if you can't exile it. There's so many great ways to reanimate it there, so busted stuff from Amy, very good deck, and we're going to start off today's draft 0-1, but at least we got to see a really cool strategy. That looks like a very fun archetype. Again, I'm really in love with all the mechanics in the set. There's a lot of graveyard synergies, again, with Unearth and stuff, but as you can see there's also Reanimator decks like that are really cool. So seems like just a lot of really cool, really great stuff you can do with this set, and I'm super excited to play as wide a variety of archetypes as possible in this format. And this is a format where it's going to probably be really hard for the format to get stale super fast, because you have the Mystical Archives thing going on, you have the retro artifacts. So even if you've drafted a ton, there's like one super random card in every pack that could be anything up to and including like a Wormcoil engine that just completely changes things around. Really, really early to make any vast assumptions about the set, but I'm so into it right now. So we are going to make it into game 2 now. Got a turn 2 Goring Warplow here. Not too much else going on. Scrapwork Rager's solid, but a little slow. Just going to curve out and see what happens. Goblin Blast Runner, very aggressive stuff from my opponents. 1/2 that gets +2/+0 and menace as long as they've sacrificed a permanent this turn. And that's 2 of them. The hyper aggro Rakdos Sacrifice deck, I am very worried. I definitely need to play little baby Death Toucher over here. This is going to be disastrous for me. There is an active treason effect in this format. There is a way to steal an opponent's card until end of turn, and there are several ways to sacrifice cards of your own for value. So this is like a really low curve, really aggressive deck here. 3 1-drops and a 2-drop so far. The 2-drop unearths. Warplow for Revenant seems like a bad deal since the Revenant can just come back later. I am not going to put a Blanchwood Armor on my Goring Warplow. But I am going to keep playing Forests first, just in case. Trade for the Mutt is not great either, because they can unearth that. Junkyard Genius is here, and that is the sacrifice build around uncommon, very, very powerful card. It comes with a Powerstone, and you can spend 3 mana and sack a creature or artifact. You can do this at instant speed. Give your whole field +1/+0 menace and haste. That is tremendously powerful. So I could Rager or Golem. I'm going to Rager. I do lose a life this way, but it gives me a card I'm very okay with trading off. third Goblin Blast Runner, and now they can tap the Powerstone to pay for Junkyard Genius's effect, so it only costs red-black instead of red-black and 1. They're going to sack the Revenant, give the whole field menace here, so I have to double block something, and yeah, we're going to die really quickly to this. Major synergy deck from our opponent, this Rakdos Sacrifice with a super low curve, and the Blast Runners get +3/+0 this turn because they get +2 and +1 from Genius. We are so dead. That's already 15 damage, and I can only block one of it. Which means if they attack everybody, I'm just dead this turn, right? Because I could block Genius, but then I take 15, or I can block one of these and I take 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I guess all I can do is double block one of these and take 13. Go to 1 life. That is so sick. What a cool build around there. Junkyard Genius just coming in mega hot. Well, I can gain 3 life, but that's not going to be enough with the Junkyard Genius still on board to give the board menace again. So we'll play that Boulder Branch Golem here. We'll gain a little bit of life, but our opponent just got the nuts here. That was a insane curve. 3 Blast Runners on the board when you activate the Genius to make them all 4/2 menaces. Disgusting stuff from our opponent. We're going to be 0-2 to start it off. We might start off with an 0-3 to join this format, but I'm okay with that. I'm still having a really fun time just seeing the kind of stuff that is possible in this format. It is wild. These are some really, really cool decks. I'm so into this stuff right now. I'm so excited. I'm going to draft this format way too much. Oh, it's Numot now. Well, if there was ever a time to go 0-3, playing against Numot as your final opponent would be a pretty good opportunity, because Numot is one of the best drafters on Arena, a draft grinder, a streamer as well. Numot the Nummy has a YouTube channel I highly recommend if you're into more competitive drafting. Numot does daily videos just like me. And yeah, Numot is fantastic. I don't want to mulligan this because I have Disfigure, and if I hit any land, I hit Tower Worker. If I hit a Forest, I hit Clear Cutter. I'm on the draw, so I'm not going to mulligan this. Worst case scenario, we get to move on to the next draft, which will be up tomorrow. Best case scenario, I hit a single Forest and the whole hand is active, because then I get to play the Clear Cutter, and I have more green mana that way. All right, one last draw step. I got to hit a Forest. Numot got a pretty great artifact from the retro artifact list. The Maze Mine Tome essentially is going to draw Numot 4 extra cards this game and gain Numot 4 life. Very good card. It ends up in a lot of the arena cubes, and it's pretty solid even in arena cube. So pretty exceptional in a regular limited format. Wow, yeah, Numot's got a very good deck. Turn 3 Arbalest Engineers to get that tapped Powerstone token. If I get a single 1/3 down, I'm not going to want to have Disfigured a 2/2, so I'm just going to hold on to that, and really lucky we do. How bad do I need double green? Getting to Obstinate Bailoff is pretty big, but not being able to do the 6-mana version of Clear Cutter is pretty sad. Let's do Tower Worker here. This also means if Numot has removal that Numot wants to use on one of my mana dorks, they'll use it on the weaker mana dork, at least. Transmigrant Altar. It doesn't do too much right now, but it will in the future. So at least Numot's playing a nice, slow game here. I'm into it. Play a Deathbloom Ritualist with no creatures in grave. Let's go. 5 mana, 3/5. That's what it's all about. Is Numot just going to do something really explosive here? Sacrifice the Arbalest Engineers for triple colorless? Uh-oh. It looks like it's happening. Maybe. Ooh, I see. So Numat's going to be doing the active treason thing, active treasoning our cards and then sacrificing them to the transmigrant altar. It's pretty rude. Is pretty rude. Got a war plow, but I'm 1 mana off of playing it. Don't have anything I can really play this turn. I could weld the ritualist back to my hand, but nothing great I can do right now. I really want to hit that just one more land to get to the clear cutter to make a big Awaken the Woods later. Yeah, let's just play the war plow and then hold up a disfigure. It's not great, but we're not under a tremendous amount of pressure. The best thing that Numot has going for him is that you can just steal our biggest threats every turn. So if I'm not really playing anything, Numot's not really destroying anything anyway. But Numot is also far ahead in card advantage with the Maze Mind Tome. So we're going to need to make some really, really, really big plays with the cards that we have if we want to keep up with Numot's card draw of just being able to play more spells than us. Alright, Numot draws another card off the Maze Mind Tome. Simulacrum. What on earth is that? Put 2+1/+1 counters on a creature you control? Okay. And it unearths. It's pretty good. Just disfigure in response to the counters. And then Numot can sack the engineers in response to that. It's 3 mana to get the... No, it's only 2 mana to get the 3/3? Uh-oh. Alright, well then Numot can get a 3/3 in response to this. But we still kind of mitigate what the Simulacrum would have done. Oh, Numot's going for the mana here. Gonna cast another spell instead. A Liquimetal Coating. Then an Alloy Animist? What kind of wild nonsense is Numot doing right now? Liquimetal Coating? Numot must have a lot of artifact removal, potentially. I'm just still waiting for one land here. I think we're just playing another Warp Plow. You know what, let's weld a Warp Plow. I should have just welded the first one. There should be all Warp Plows all day as I sit here and wait for land number 5. So that Animist from Numot gets to animate Power Stones, obviously. Make them 4/4s to attack in. Just gonna keep blocking with War Plows, killing the Power Stone tokens. And this altar has very much put in work. Alright, Refractor, draw us a land, please. We are incapable of drawing that land. I guess we are playing another War Plow. All War Plows all day. Yep, the big ramp decks are definitely not going to work out great if you miss land drops. We should probably be playing 18 lands. Because as you can see, even just missing like the 5th land drop is really painful here. And missing it for multiple turns as we have is just, we're just sitting here doing nothing. While Numot has the world as his oyster. All right, I'm assuming Numot's going to bring back the Animist somehow here. You do get to get extra Unearth value off the altar, which is pretty cool. You get to sacrifice things that you've unearthed to keep a permanent body out of them. Altar's playing super well. Oh, Numot just has a bonus Animist. Oh, I can't cast this? Oh, I don't have double green. Oh my god. Yeah, not having Forest 2 has been astronomically painful here. I want to just exile the Animist. Just doesn't feel awesome, but that'd be where we're at. Sure. Just exile the little Animist. While Numot is tapped out, so Numot can't sack it for value. Our green-black ramp deck is played. Super rough. I should have just played this clear cutter way earlier, but like I was just like in too deep now. Just never playing it as a 1/3. I will die before I cast that as a 1/3 this game when I'm 1 mana away, and I've been 1 mana away for like 5 turns. I would rather die, and I probably will die for not casting this as a 1/3, but so be it. So be it. That'll be my first experience in Brothers War Draft. Definitely have some first impressions so far. It seems like these decks are incredibly synergy driven, and synergy can lead to some tremendously powerful lines. And this is not as slow of a format as I thought it would be with all the prototype stuff. So I feel like I missed a bit there for sure. Numot's going to exile my forest. Yep. Numot on the rudest deck imaginable. On the Liquimetal Coating to exile lands deck. We'll drop a Rager, I guess, and still not a land. All right, I'll scoop them up now. Rough mana stuff in that last game, but Numot's got a very cool strategy going for the Liquimetal Coating deck. It is always cool to be able to build a deck partially around something from the Mystical Archives or the Retro Artifacts in this set. That being said, it is still monstrously rude to exile your opponent's 1 forest turn 10 or something. Already punished enough by the draws, and then get even more punished by Numot himself. Well, obviously the deck did not perform how I would have preferred it to. The curve is not as bad as it looks because of the prototype cards, but the curve was still a little bad. The deck was a little slow for the format. The 2 first losses, we just lost because our deck is never going to outrace those decks. The black-white Reanimator deck with a turn 3 Gix from Amy the Amazonian, and the red-black Sacrifice aggro deck that was just attacking for 15 damage on like turn 4. That was devastating as well. So some really scary, really aggressive archetypes here. And next draft, I might want to try to do something super aggro. So this was a deck where we got to play a lot of the rampy stuff and show off some of those kind of ramp mechanics that they really put into the format to try to help you cast these super massive, super big artifacts. But based on the best decks we played against today, Numot's deck was the coolest, the most fun probably, but I don't think Numot's was the scariest deck. The first 2 decks were just devastating so quickly that I might be interested in trying some aggro stuff in the future. Despite the set's appearances, aggro might be where it's potentially at here. Again, way too early to say. I've only played 1 draft of the format, but one thing is for sure, these decks are super synergistic. There are a lot of build-around cards in the format, a lot of pretty narrow cards, like Liquimetal Coating, where you can Liquimetal Coating to exile your opponent's stuff with your shoot downs, which is pretty cool. There's really synergy-driven stuff with all the cards that care about specifically running mana value 3 or less, and specifically just sacrificing a bunch of stuff in the red-black. So seems like a really cool format, and I'm very excited to draft it some more. But that is going to end today's draft. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed drafting. Even if I 0-3'd, I still had a great time today, and I'm very excited to see how this format shapes up as time progresses. Again, I'm going to be doing these videos daily until the launch of Brothers War, and then I'm just going to be doing daily regular drafts of the format, so I will definitely see you all tomorrow for some more Brothers War early access. So once again, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon for some more Magic Arena. And thank you once again, got to get the proper disclaimers out of the way, thank you once again to Wizards of the Coast for providing me with this early access account. See you all next time.